On the morning of December 1st, 1944, at 10:42, Lieutenant Alfred Rose settled into the turret of an M36 Jackson tank destroyer on raised terrain northeast of Beeck, Germany. He struggled with unfamiliar controls while enemy armor moved through the countryside 2 miles distant. Rose was 26, had spent just 3 weeks with the 814th Tank Destroyer Battalion, and had yet to score a single confirmed kill. Elements of Germany's 5th Panzer Army spread across the Rhineland, fielding at least 40 Panther tanks whose thick frontal plates could bounce American shells from 800 yards out. Rose's unit had already lost 11 tank destroyers that November, with 17 crew members dead. The pattern never changed. German gunners spotted American positions first and fired first, killing American crews before they understood what happened. The older M10 Wolverine tank destroyers couldn't punch through Panther armor beyond 500 yards. American crews had to close the distance for kill shots, but by then, German 88mm cannons had already turned their vehicles into burning graves. The Army's answer arrived in September, the M36 Jackson, mounting a powerful 90mm main gun on a Sherman chassis. This weapon could pierce 5.6 inches of armor at 1,500 yards. On paper, it solved the Panther problem. In reality, Rose had fired exactly 4 practice rounds through this gun. Rose didn't know the sight markings, the ranging system, or whether the telescopic adjustments matched the manual or some undocumented field modification. His commander told him to learn fast. The battalion was moving to support Operation Clipper, pushing to clear German forces from the Siegfried Line fortifications near Geilenkirchen. Intelligence reported enemy armor counterattacking across the entire sector. Panthers, Tiger tanks, self-propelled guns, targets that demanded gunners who knew their equipment cold. Rose examined the M76F telescopic sight mounted before the gunner's seat. The sight displayed range markings in 100-yard steps. The furthest marking read 40,600 yards, maximum effective range of 2.61 miles. He'd never heard of anyone engaging armor at such distance. Tank battles happened at 500 yards, maybe 1,000 with favorable terrain. Anything beyond that was artillery territory. The Jackson's turret felt cramped. The loader sat to his left, the commander above and behind, with the assistant driver and driver down in the hull. Rose ran his hands over the traverse controls, the elevation wheel, the firing mechanism. Everything felt strange. 3 weeks wasn't enough time to build the muscle memory that kept gunners breathing. He needed months, but had only hours. The high ground northeast of Beeck provided clear views across German countryside. Open fields, scattered tree lines, a highway running roughly parallel to their spot. Excellent terrain for spotting targets and for being spotted. German forward observers had been directing artillery fire all week. The battalion learned to stay spread out, never bunching more than 2 vehicles together. At 11:15, movement caught Rose's attention at the absolute edge of his sight picture. Something dark and angular moved slowly across his field of view at what seemed an impossible distance for direct fire. The target crossed from left to right through Rose's optics at what he guessed was extreme range. Through the M76F sight, the shape formed into the unmistakable outline of a German Panther tank. Low profile, long barrel, the characteristic sloped armor that made frontal hits nearly impossible. The tank traveled along what looked like a road or highway, moving at maybe 6 to 8 miles per hour. Rose's first thought was to report the sighting and let someone else handle it. The distance had to exceed 2 miles. Nobody engaged tanks at 2 miles. The drop of Linden would send rounds sailing over or bearing short by hundreds of yards. Crosswinds would push shells off target. The margin for error at that distance measured in tiny fractions of a degree. But the Panther wasn't zigzagging or taking evasive moves. It rolled in a straight line along that far road, completely unaware that an American tank destroyer tracked it from high ground 2.5 miles away. This was the kind of target that appeared once in a war if you were fortunate, and Rose had zero experience engaging at such range. He checked the sight markings again. The M76F had been designed specifically for the 90mm gun. The range markings weren't random. They'd been calculated based on the gun's muzzle speed, the standard armor-piercing rounds' flight characteristics, and typical combat conditions. The engineers who designed this sight included that 4,600-yard marking for a reason. They believed the gun could reach that far. Whether it could actually hit anything at that distance was another question entirely. Rose started calculating. The Panther moved perpendicular to his position, meaning he'd need to lead the target. At 2.5 miles, the round would take several seconds to arrive. During that time, the Panther would keep rolling forward. He'd need to aim ahead of the tank by dozens of yards, maybe more. The exact math required knowing the precise distance, the target's exact speed, and the projectile's flight time. He had none of these numbers with certainty. The M36 Jackson carried two main ammunition types. The M82 armor-piercing capped round was built for penetrating armor. It packed a large explosive charge that detonated after penetration, creating maximum internal damage. At 500 yards, it could punch through 5.1 inches of armor. At 1,000 yards, 4.8 inches. At 4,600 yards, the penetration tables in the technical manual simply stopped listing numbers. The assumption was nobody would attempt shots at that range. Rose understood the science. Every yard of distance meant more speed loss, more drop, more wind drift. By the time an M82 round traveled 4,600 yards, it would have shed significant striking power. It might not pierce the Panther's frontal armor, even if it connected, but the Panther's side armor told a different story, 40 to 50 millimeters thick, or 1.6 to 2 inches, vulnerable to the 90mm gun even at extended range. The target continued its steady movement across the distant highway. Rose made a choice that violated every tank destroyer principle he'd been taught. He would attempt the shot, not because he thought it would succeed, but because this was the only way to discover if the M36's systems could actually perform at their theoretical maximum. Rose called out the sighting to his commander without removing his eye from the telescopic sight. "Panther, extreme range, moving lateral." The commander climbed up beside him, looked through his own optics, and went quiet for 5 seconds. When he spoke, his answer was simple. Rose's call, Rose's shot. The loader already had an M82 armor-piercing round loaded. Standard procedure. Tank destroyers kept AP rounds chambered at all times in combat zones. Rose focused on the ranging problem. The M76F showed distance markings, but estimating range to a moving target at 2.5 miles required more than eyeballing the sight. He needed to bracket the target with ranging shots. Ranging fire was standard for artillery: shoot short, shoot long, walk the rounds onto target until you found the correct elevation and lead. For a tank destroyer engaging armor at 400 yards, ranging fire was suicide. It gave away your position and gave the enemy time to return fire or move. But at 4,600 yards, the Panther crew wouldn't hear the shots, wouldn't see the muzzle flash, wouldn't know they were being targeted until rounds started landing near their position. Rose set the elevation for what he estimated was 4,000 yards, short of where he believed the target actually was. He wanted to see where the round landed so he could adjust. The traverse controls let him track the Panther's movement. Rose led the target by roughly 50 yards, his best guess at compensating for the Panther's forward movement during the shell's flight time. He pressed the firing trigger. The 90mm gun's kick rocked the entire turret. The blast was enormous, even with the double baffle muzzle brake the Army had started installing in November. Smoke and dust blocked the sight picture for 2 seconds. When it cleared, Rose kept his eye pressed to the optic, watching for impact. At 4,000 yards, flight time was roughly 6 seconds. Rose counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nothing visible. The distance was too great to see actual impact through the telescopic sight. He'd need to fire again and watch for dust clouds or ground disturbance that might show where the round landed. He adjusted elevation upward, added another 100 yards to his guess. The Panther still rolled along the highway, apparently unaware that someone was shooting at it from a distance that exceeded normal tank ranges by a factor of 4. Rose led the target again, this time by 60 yards to account for increased flight time at the longer range. Second shot. The gun fired, recoil, smoke. Rose kept the sight trained on the area where he expected impact. 6 seconds of flight time, maybe 7 at this range. He counted again while keeping the Panther centered in his view. The target continued its steady movement, no sign it was taking evasive action. no indication its crew had spotted the American position on the high ground northeast of Beeck. Then Rose saw it, a small dust cloud erupting on the highway surface, roughly 20 yards short of the Panther's position. The round had landed close, very close. Close enough that Rose now had solid data for his final adjustment. He knew the range, he knew the lead, he knew the drop. He made one final elevation correction, added 10 yards to his lead calculation to account for the Panther's continued forward movement. He set the range marking on the site to exactly 4,600 yards, the maximum marking on the M36F telescopic site. He waited for the Panther to move into the precise position where his calculations said the round would intercept the target's path. The moment arrived. Rose fired the third shot. The 90mm round covered 4,600 yards in roughly 7 seconds. Rose kept the Panther centered in his telescopic sight, watching for impact. The M82 armor-piercing shell was traveling at about 1,500 feet per second when it left the barrel. By the time it reached maximum range, speed had dropped significantly. But physics favored Rose in one critical way. The Panther's side armor was only 40 to 50 millimeters thick. Even a slowed 90mm round kept enough striking power to pierce that. The hit showed through the M76F sight as a bright flash on the Panther's left side hull. Rose had led the target perfectly. The round struck the tank just behind the front road wheel, exactly where the side armor was thinnest and where the ammunition storage bin sat. The impact was followed immediately by a larger secondary blast. The Panther's own 79 rounds of 75mm ammunition detonated inside the fighting compartment. The German tank lurched to a halt. Smoke began pouring from the turret hatches. The crew would be dead or dying. A direct hit into the ammunition storage at that location meant catastrophic internal damage. The explosion would have killed the loader instantly. The pressure wave would have knocked out everyone else in the turret. Even if some crew members survived the initial blast, they had seconds to escape before the fire reached the fuel tanks. Rose didn't stop shooting. Standard procedure for tank destroyer crews was to keep engaging until the target was confirmed destroyed. A stopped tank wasn't necessarily a dead tank. German crews were trained to play dead, waiting for American units to pass before restarting their vehicles and attacking from behind. Rose had heard stories from other battalions about Panthers that had taken multiple hits, appeared knocked out, then returned to action 30 minutes later after crews made field repairs. He reloaded with another M82 armor-piercing round and fired again. Fourth shot, same aim point. The round hit the Panther's hull near the original hole. By now, the internal fire was spreading. The fifth shot used high explosive instead of armor-piercing. He rounds were devastating against stopped vehicles. The blast ripped away external parts and ensured the fire would consume everything inside the tank. Rose fired a sixth round, then a seventh. He kept shooting until flames visibly erupted from every hatch and vision port on the Panther. The thick black smoke, characteristic of burning diesel fuel, rose from the wreck in a column that would be visible for miles. There was no possibility of that crew surviving, no possibility of that tank returning to service. The engagement had lasted roughly 2 minutes from first shot to confirmed kill. Rose had used 7 90mm rounds, 3 for ranging, 4 to ensure destruction. The range was 4,600 yards, 2.61 miles. The maximum effective range of the M76F telescopic sight mounted in the M36 Jackson. When Rose finally pulled back from the sight, his hand shook. Not from fear, from the realization of what he'd just accomplished. He'd destroyed a Panther tank at a range that exceeded every engagement distance he'd ever heard of in armored warfare. The shot would go into the 814th Tank Destroyer Battalion's after-action report, witnessed and verified by his commander and the other crew members in the Jackson. It would become part of the official record. What Rose didn't know was that his confirmed kill at 4,600 yards would remain the second longest tank versus tank engagement in military history for the next 47 years. Only 500 yards short of a record that wouldn't be broken until a British Challenger tank made an impossible shot during the Gulf War in 1991. The burning Panther remained visible on the distant highway for the next 30 minutes. Other American units in the sector reported the smoke column. Forward observers tried to determine if it was a knocked-out German vehicle or a destroyed American position. The 814th Tank Destroyer Battalion's operations officer eventually confirmed the kill through map coordinates and timeline matching. Rose's position on the high ground northeast of Beeck aligned perfectly with the sight lines to the burning wreck. By 1300 hours, word of the shot had spread through the battalion. A lieutenant nobody had heard of 3 weeks ago had just made the longest confirmed tank destroyer kill in the European theater. Crews from other M36 Jacksons started asking questions. What range marking did he use? How many ranging shots? What was the lead calculation? Rose didn't have clean answers. He'd fired by gut feeling and science, not by some repeatable formula other gunners could memorize. The M36 Jackson had only been in combat since September, 4 months of service. American tank destroyer battalions had spent most of 1944 fighting with the M10 Wolverine, a vehicle whose 3-inch gun couldn't reliably pierce German heavy armor beyond 600 yards. The 90mm gun changed that equation. It was adapted from anti-aircraft artillery, a weapon designed to reach bombers at 15,000 feet altitude. Mounting that gun in a mobile turret on a Sherman-based chassis gave American forces their first vehicle capable of engaging German heavy armor on equal terms. The M36 could penetrate Panther frontal armor at 1,000 yards. It could destroy Tigers at ranges where the Tiger's 88mm gun struggled to pierce the M36's frontal slope. But the weapon's true capability extended far beyond normal engagement distances. The 90mm M3 gun had a muzzle speed of 2,700 feet per second. The M82 armor-piercing round weighed 24 pounds. Basic science said that combination could reach targets at 4,000 yards or more. The question wasn't whether the gun could shoot that far. The question was whether anyone could aim accurately enough to hit a moving tank at that distance. Rose had answered that question. Not through superior training, not through months of practice, through 2 ranging shots that gave him the data he needed to make the 3rd shot count. The engagement showed something the Army's Ordnance Department had suspected but never confirmed in combat. The M76F telescopic sight's maximum range marking of 4,600 yards wasn't theoretical. It was functional. The Battle of the Bulge began 16 days after Rose's record shot. On December 16th, German forces launched their massive counteroffensive through the Ardennes forest. 3 entire armies, 200,000 troops, 600 tanks, including the newest Panthers and King Tigers. The offensive caught American forces completely off guard. Within 48 hours, German armored spearheads had pushed 30 miles into Allied lines. The 814th Tank Destroyer Battalion received emergency orders on December 18th. Redeploy south immediately, support the 7th Armored Division at Saint-Vith. The town was a critical road junction. If German forces captured it, they would have direct access to the Meuse River crossings, and the entire northern shoulder of the American defensive line would collapse. Rose's company moved through Belgium in darkness. The roads were chaos, supply trucks heading west away from the German advance, infantry units trying to reach defensive positions, artillery batteries moving under fire. The 814th arrived at Saint-Vith on December 19th and immediately went into action. German Panther battalions were already engaging American positions on the eastern approaches to the town. The fighting around Saint-Vith bore no resemblance to Rose's long-range engagement at Beeck. This was close-quarters armor combat, Panthers appearing from tree lines at 300 yards. American tank destroyers firing from behind burning buildings, German infantry with Panzerfaust hunting M36s through village streets. The kind of fighting where the side that spotted first won, where hesitation measured in seconds meant death. Rose's Jackson took up position on the southern edge of Saint-Vith on December 20th. His field of fire covered a road junction where German armor was expected to attack. The range was 800 yards, standard engagement distance. No exotic calculations required. Just point the 90mm gun at center mass and shoot when targets appeared. The attack came at dawn on December 21st. 4 Panthers supported by 2 companies of Panzer Grenadiers. Rose's company knocked out 2 Panthers in the first minute of fighting. German return fire destroyed 1 M36 and damaged 2 others. The engagement lasted 14 minutes. When it ended, all 4 German tanks were burning and the infantry had pulled back. American casualties: 3 tank destroyers destroyed, 11 crew members dead or wounded. Rose survived Saint-Vith. His Jackson took 2 hits from German 75mm guns, both bounced off the frontal armor. The M36's sloped front plate was effectively 140 millimeters thick when hit at an angle. German guns struggled to pierce it beyond 600 yards. But the open-top turret was vulnerable to artillery, airbursts, and plunging fire. Several M36s in the battalion were knocked out by indirect fire during the week-long defense of Saint-Vite. By December 23rd, American forces had to abandon the town. German pressure was overwhelming. The 7th Armored Division conducted a fighting withdrawal westward. The 814th Tank Destroyer Battalion provided rear guard, engaging German pursuit forces at every defensible position. Rose fired his 90mm gun 43 times during the withdrawal, all at ranges under 1,000 yards, all at targets he could see clearly through his telescopic sight. Rose would never forget the Panther burning on that distant highway at 4,600 yards. But the shots that kept him alive through the bulge were the ones he made at point-blank range against tanks that were shooting back. The 814th Tank Destroyer Battalion spent January 1945 rebuilding after the bulge. The battalion had lost 19 M36 Jacksons during the German offensive, with 26 crew members killed and 41 wounded. Replacement vehicles arrived from depot stocks in France. Replacement crews came straight from training facilities in the United States. Most had never fired a 90mm gun in combat. Rose found himself training the new gunners, teaching them the M36 telescopic sight, explaining how to estimate range, how to lead moving targets, how to adjust for wind and elevation. The new crews asked about his 4,600-yard shot. Rose told them to forget it. That kind of engagement happened once in a war. What they needed to learn was how to kill Panthers at 500 yards while under fire. That was the skill that kept tank destroyer crews alive. By February, the battalion was back in action. American forces were pushing toward the Rhine River. German resistance was collapsing, but remained fierce at key defensive positions. Panthers and King Tigers still appeared wherever the Wehrmacht tried to hold ground. The M36 Jackson remained the most effective American answer to German heavy armor. Its 90mm gun could penetrate any German tank from the front at normal combat ranges. Rose participated in the Rhine crossing operations in March. His Jackson was part of the support element for the 9th Army's assault near Wesel. German forces on the East Bank included elements of 3 panzer divisions. The fighting was intense but brief. American air superiority and overwhelming artillery support broke German defensive positions within 48 hours. Rose's company knocked out 6 Panthers and 2 King Tigers during the crossing, all at ranges under 800 yards. April brought the final push into Germany's industrial heartland. The 814th Tank Destroyer Battalion advanced through the Ruhr pocket, engaging scattered German resistance. Most German armor units had been destroyed or had run out of fuel. The Panthers and Tigers that had dominated European battlefields for 2 years were burning wrecks or abandoned hulls scattered across hundreds of miles of terrain. Rose saw his last combat action on April 23rd near the Elbe River. A single Panther appeared from a farm complex at roughly 600 yards. The German crew was attempting to retreat eastward ahead of American forces. Rose engaged with 2 rounds. Both hits. The Panther burned. It was his 47th confirmed kill and with the M36's 90mm gun. 46 of those kills happened at ranges under 1,000 yards. Germany surrendered on May 8th. The 814th Tank Destroyer Battalion received orders to prepare for redeployment to the Pacific Theater. The plan was to equip the battalion with newer M36 variants and use them against Japanese armor in the expected invasion of the home islands. The atomic bombs dropped in August made that invasion unnecessary. Rose never fired the 90mm gun in combat again. The after-action reports from December 1st, 1944 remained in the battalion's official records. Lieutenant Alfred Rose, M36 Jackson, Panther destroyed at 4,600 yards, witnessed and verified. The shot was documented in multiple Army publications over the following decades. Military historians analyzing tank warfare cited it as evidence of the M36's capabilities. Gunnery instructors used it as an example of what was theoretically possible with proper ranging and calculation. But the shot's real significance wasn't the distance. It was what the engagement revealed about the evolution of armored warfare. The M36 Jackson represented the peak of American tank destroyer development during World War II, a vehicle that could engage and destroy the most heavily armored German tanks at ranges that exceeded anything doctrine had anticipated. Rose's shot at 4,600 yards proved the weapon could perform at the absolute limits of its design specifications. For 47 years, that record stood as the second longest tank kill in military history. The record Rose set on December 1, 1944, remained unbroken through Korea, through Vietnam, through decades of Cold War tank development and doctrine refinement. The United States Army continued improving its armored vehicle capabilities. Better guns, better fire control systems, better ammunition. But no American tank crew ever documented a confirmed kill at a greater range than Rose's 4,600 yards. The British Army broke the record on February 26, 1991. A Challenger 1 main battle tank with the call sign 11B was operating in Iraq during Operation Desert Storm. The crew spotted an Iraqi tank at extreme range during the ground war to liberate Kuwait. The gunner fired a depleted uranium round using advanced fire control computers and thermal imaging systems that didn't exist in 1940. The round hit at 5,100 yards, 3.1 miles, the longest confirmed tank versus tank kill in military history. Rose's shot fell to second place, but context matters. The Challenger crew in 1991 had laser rangefinders, ballistic computers, stabilized gun platforms, digital fire control systems that automatically calculated lead and elevation. Rose had mechanical controls, an optical sight, and 3 years of wartime experience compressed into 3 weeks. He made his shot with tools from 1944 against a target moving at maximum engagement range in combat conditions. Rose survived the war. He left active duty in 1946 and returned to civilian life. The Army tried to recruit him for gunnery instructor positions at Fort Knox, but he declined. He'd spent 3 years shooting at people. He was done. The records show he never spoke publicly about his December 1st engagement. No interviews, no memoirs, no attempts to profit from being part of military history. The after-action reports remained in the archives. Historians discovered them decades later while researching tank destroyer operations in Northwest Europe. The engagement at 4,600 yards appeared in several academic papers on armored warfare. Military analysts used it as a case study in the limits of direct fire engagement. The shot represented the absolute maximum effective range for World War II-era tank guns operating under ideal conditions. Every like tells the platform to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about tank destroyer gunners who saved lives with calculations and cold precision. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Lieutenant Alfred Rose doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.